I want you to imagine something with me right now. It's late at night. You're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and there's this weight pressing down on your chest. Not a physical weight, but something heavier. It's the thought of money, or rather, the lack of it. The bills stacked on your kitchen counter. The bank account that seems to shrink faster than it grows. The dreams you've tucked away because they feel impossible when you're just trying to survive. And in those quiet moments before sleep, when the world goes still and it's just you and your thoughts, you might whisper prayers or worries into the darkness, hoping someone or something is listening. But what if I told you that those moments, those sacred spaces between waking and sleeping, hold more power than you've ever imagined? What if the words you speak into that darkness aren't just wishes floating into the void, but actual seeds you're planting in the most fertile soil of creation? What if I told you there are 5 specific words, so simple a child could say them, yet so powerful they can shift the entire course of your financial reality? Would you want to know them? Because I'm going to share them with you tonight. But first, you need to understand why they work. And that story begins not with money at all, but with the invisible laws that govern every single thing you've ever experienced in your life. My name is Florence Shinn, and I've spent my life studying something most people can't see but everyone experiences, the spiritual laws that run underneath our visible world like rivers beneath the earth. And what I've discovered has changed not just my life, but the lives of thousands of people who are exactly where you might be right now. Stuck, afraid, watching others prosper while you struggle, wondering why abundance flows so freely to some while you're constantly swimming upstream. But here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. This isn't about positive thinking. It's not about lying to yourself or pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is about understanding how creation actually works, how your words, especially the ones you speak in that vulnerable space before sleep, are literally constructing your tomorrow. You see, most people treat words like they're just sounds, vibrations that disappear into air. But words are so much more than that. Words are containers. They carry intention, emotion, belief, and most importantly, they carry creative power. In the Bible, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Do you know what that means? It means the entire universe was spoken into existence. Creation itself is a verbal act, and you, whether you know it or not, are creating with your words every single day. Let me tell you about a woman who came to me years ago. Let's call her Margaret. Margaret was drowning in debt. Not a little debt, the kind that keeps you up at night calculating whether you should pay the electric bill or buy groceries. She tried everything: budgeting, extra jobs, cutting every possible expense. But no matter what she did, money slipped through her fingers like water. She'd pray, sure. She'd beg God for help. But her prayers sounded like this: "Please God, I'm so broke. I don't know how I'm going to make it. There's never enough. Why is this always happening to me?" And then she'd cry herself to sleep, exhausted and defeated. When Margaret came to me, the first thing I asked her was this: "What are you saying to yourself about money?" And she looked at me confused because she thought her words didn't matter. She thought her circumstances were creating her words. She didn't realize it was the other way around. Her words were creating her circumstances. Every time she said, "I'm broke," she was decreeing poverty. Every time she said, "There's never enough," she was commanding lack to remain. She was using the most powerful creative force in the universe, her own spoken word, to build a prison around herself. So we started to change her words. Specifically, the words she spoke before sleep. Because that moment, when your conscious mind starts to fade and your subconscious mind opens wide, is when you're most receptive to suggestion. It's when seeds sink deepest. And what I gave her were 5 words. Just 5. So simple she almost didn't believe they could do anything. But she was desperate enough to try. Within 3 months, Margaret's entire financial reality had transformed. Not because she worked harder, not because she won the lottery, but because something shifted in the invisible realm first, and then her visible world rearranged itself to match. A job opportunity appeared out of nowhere, paying twice what she'd been making. An old debt she thought she'd have to pay was suddenly forgiven due to an accounting error. Money came to her in ways she couldn't have planned or predicted, and it all started with 5 words before sleep. Now, I can feel some of you pulling back right now. I can feel the skepticism rising up. You're thinking this sounds too easy, too good to be true, maybe even a little foolish. And I understand that because we've been taught that life is hard, that money comes from grinding and suffering and sacrifice, that if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't count. But what if that entire belief system is exactly what's been blocking your abundance? What if the universe, God, the divine, whatever you want to call it, is trying to give to you, but your own words keep slamming the door shut? Let me take you deeper. There's a spiritual law just as reliable as gravity, called the law of correspondence. It means your outer world is a perfect reflection of your inner world. As within, so without. As above, so below. What you believe internally, you experience externally. And how do we know what we really believe? Not by what we say we believe, but by the words we speak consistently, especially when we're not thinking about it. Your words reveal your true beliefs, and your beliefs create your reality. Most people are running an old, broken program in their subconscious mind about money. Maybe you grew up hearing, money doesn't grow on trees, or we can't afford that, or rich people are greedy. Those statements, heard over and over, became beliefs. And those beliefs became the filter through which you see and experience money. So even when opportunity comes, you might not recognize it because your filter says, this isn't for people like me. Or you might get money, but immediately lose it because deep down, you don't believe you deserve to keep it. This is why affirmations alone often don't work. You can say, I am rich 1,000 times, but if underneath that statement is a belief that says, no, you're not, you're kidding yourself. The underlying belief wins every time. So we are not just going to give you words to repeat. We're going to shift the belief underneath. We're going to plant something new in soil that's been prepared to receive it. The 5 words I'm going to give you are designed to bypass your skepticism and speak directly to your subconscious mind. They're designed to align you with divine supply, to open channels that have been closed, to remind you of a truth you knew before the world taught you to forget it, that you are connected to an infinite source, and that source wants to flow through you, not because you're special, but because you're alive, because you're part of the creation, and abundance is your birthright. But before I give you these 5 words, you need to understand the foundation they're built on. You need to understand what I call the game of life, because life isn't random. It's not chaos. It's a game, and like any game, it has rules. Most people are playing the game without knowing the rules, and then they wonder why they keep losing. But once you know the rules, everything changes. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become a conscious creator. You stop reacting and start directing. The first rule of the game is this: your word is your wand. Everything you say, you decree. You're not just describing reality, you're prescribing it. You're giving orders to the universe. And the universe doesn't judge whether your orders are good for you or not. It just says yes. You say, I'm always struggling with money. And the universe says, yes, you are. You say, I never get a break. And the universe says, yes, you don't. It's neutral. It's a mirror. It reflects back exactly what you're projecting. The second rule is this: you cannot receive what you refuse to give. If you want love, you must give love. If you want respect, you must give respect. And if you want money, you must give money. Not all of it, not recklessly, but you must be willing to let it flow through you, not hoard it in fear, because hoarding comes from lack consciousness. It says there's not enough, and the universe hears that decree and makes it so, But giving, even when you don't have much, says, I trust the supply. I know more is coming. And that trust opens the floodgates. The third rule is this: resentment and unforgiveness block your good. If you're angry at someone, jealous of someone, bitter about the past, that energy sits in you like a dam, blocking the flow of abundance. I've seen people miss out on fortunes because they couldn't forgive. Their inheritance went to someone else. Their business deal fell through, not because God was punishing them, but because their own energy was repelling their good. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the prison of negative energy. And the fourth rule, the one most people miss, is this: you must be willing to receive. That sounds obvious, but most people are terrible at receiving. They deflect compliments. They refuse help. They apologize for taking up space. And all of that is saying to the universe, I'm not worthy of receiving. So even when abundance tries to come, they push it away. Receiving is a spiritual practice. It's saying yes to your good. It's allowing yourself to be blessed. Now, with those rules in mind, we come to the 5 words. Are you ready? The 5 words you speak before sleep, the 5 words that hold the power to transform your financial reality, are these. God is my unfailing supply now. That's it. God is my unfailing supply now. 10 syllables, 5 words, 1 decree that changes everything. Let me break down why these words work. First, you're acknowledging God, Source, the universe, whatever term resonates with you. You're recognizing that your supply doesn't come from your job, your spouse, your investments, or any external source. Those are channels, but they're not the source. The source is infinite, unlimited, and it's connected to you right now. By starting with God is, you're making a present tense statement of truth. Not God will be, or I hope God is, but God is, right now, already done. Second, you're claiming my unfailing supply. Not a supply or some supply, but my supply. You're personalizing it. You're saying this infinite source is personally connected to me. It's mine to access, and it's unfailing, which means it never runs out. It never dries up. It never disappoints. No matter what the economy does, no matter what my bank account says, my true supply is unfailing because it comes from an infinite source. And third, you end with now, not tomorrow, not someday, not when I'm worthy enough. Now, this moment, present tense. You're collapsing time. You're bringing the future into the present. You're declaring that your supply is not something you're waiting for. It's something you're standing in right now. When you speak these words before sleep, you're planting them in the rich soil of your subconscious mind. Your subconscious doesn't argue. It doesn't debate. It accepts what you give it and goes to work making it real. All night long while you sleep, those words are sinking deeper and deeper, rewiring old patterns, dissolving old beliefs, opening channels that have been closed for years, maybe even lifetimes. But here's what most people don't understand. This isn't magic. It's not about tricking the universe. It's about aligning yourself with truth. The truth is, God is your unfailing supply now. That's not a hope. That's not a wish. That's spiritual law. But if you don't know it, if you don't speak it, if you don't align with it, you'll live as though it's not true. And your experience will reflect your alignment, not the truth itself. Think of it like this. There are radio waves all around you right now. Music, voices, information, all traveling through the air. But you can't hear any of it unless you have a radio tuned to the right frequency. The radio waves don't stop existing just because you can't hear them. They're there, always, waiting for you to tune in. Abundance is the same way. It's here, now, all around you. But if your frequency is tuned to lack, fear, and limitation, you won't experience it. These 5 words are how you change your frequency, how you tune yourself to the channel of abundance. Let me tell you another story. There was a man named Robert who came to me after losing everything in the stock market crash. His savings, his investments, his sense of security, everything was gone. He sat in my parlor with his head in his hands and said, "Florence, I have nothing left. I'm 53 years old and I'm starting from zero." I looked at him and said, "Robert, you haven't lost everything. You've lost money. Money is the easiest thing in the world to replace when you understand the spiritual law behind it." He looked up at me with skepticism written all over his face. "How can you say that? I worked 30 years for what I lost." "And that," I told him, "is precisely the problem. You worked for money. You didn't let money work through you." There's a tremendous difference. You see, Robert had been operating under the old paradigm, the belief that wealth comes from personal effort alone, from grinding and striving and holding tight to every penny. He had forgotten that supply comes from the invisible realm first and the visible realm second. I gave him a treatment right there. I said, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for Robert's immediate and endless supply. Let all that is his by divine right now reach him in great avalanches of abundance." Then I told him something that changed everything. I said, "Robert, for the next 30 days, you're going to act as if you're a millionaire. Not foolishly. You're not going to spend money you don't have, but you're going to carry yourself differently. You're going to think about abundance instead of lack. When you see something beautiful, you're going to say, 'I give thanks that all good things are mine.' When a bill comes, you're going to bless it and say, 'I give thanks for the perfect payment of this debt.'" He thought I was absolutely mad, but he was desperate enough to try. Within 2 weeks, an old business associate contacted him about a venture. Within 6 weeks, he had an income again. Within 6 months, he had recovered everything he'd lost, and more. But more importantly, he had learned the secret. He had learned that consciousness creates conditions, not the other way around. This is what I want you to understand deeply. Your external world is a perfect mirror of your internal world. If you're experiencing lack, it's because somewhere in your consciousness, you're holding a belief in lack. If you're experiencing limitation, you're identifying with limitation rather than with the infinite abundance that is your divine birthright. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. You're saying, "But I've tried positive thinking. I've tried affirmations. I've written in my gratitude journal every morning, and still nothing changes." And I hear, I truly do. But here's what you must understand. It's not about pasting positive words over negative beliefs. It's not about covering up doubt with a thin veneer of optimism. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your consciousness. It responds to what you truly believe in the deepest chambers of your heart. You see, you can stand in front of a mirror all day long saying, "I am wealthy. I am wealthy." But if underneath those words, there's a trembling voice whispering, "Who am I kidding? I'll never have enough," then that trembling voice is what the universe hears. That's what gets magnetized back to you. This is why I've always said, you must dig up the subconscious beliefs that are running your life, those invisible programs inherited from your parents, absorbed from society, embedded through painful experiences. These are the true architects of your reality. Let me give you a real example. I once worked with a woman who couldn't understand why she kept attracting financial emergencies. Every time she'd save a little money, something would break. The car, the water heater, medical bills would appear out of nowhere. She felt cursed. When we dove deeper, she remembered her mother constantly saying, "Money burns a hole in your pocket. The moment you get ahead, something always happens." Her mother lived that belief, and my friend had absorbed it like a sponge. She was unconsciously creating emergencies to match the pattern she'd internalized as truth. Once she recognized this belief, once she saw it clearly, she could choose differently. She began to affirm, "Money comes to me easily and stays with me joyfully. I am a wise steward of increasing abundance." But more importantly, she watched her thoughts. Every time that old program tried to run, she caught it. She replaced it. Consciously, deliberately. Within 6 months, the emergencies stopped. Her savings grew. The universe was simply reflecting back her new consciousness. She Learned what every metaphysician knows: the outer world is frozen thought. Nothing moves until consciousness moves first. And this brings us to something most people resist. You cannot skip the inner work. You cannot affirm abundance while nursing resentment. You cannot declare health while holding grudges. The contradiction cancels the power. I've watched people spend years speaking their word, wondering why nothing changes. And when I look deeper, I find they're speaking one thing with their mouths and another thing with their hearts. They say I am prosperous while thinking those wealthy people are greedy. They declare I am loved while silently believing everyone abandons me. The subconscious doesn't hear your words, it feels your conviction. This is why Jesus taught forgiveness before manifestation. This is why every spiritual tradition emphasizes purification of consciousness. Not because you're bad and need fixing, but because you cannot create from a divided mind. Let me share something that changed my entire approach to this work. A woman came to me desperate for reconciliation with her sister. They hadn't spoken in 12 years. She wanted to use affirmations to bring her sister back. I said, "Before we speak any word about your sister, let's speak a word about your heart." She looked confused. "You cannot draw love to you while holding hate," I explained. "Forgive her first, not for her sake, but for yours." Forgiveness is simply giving up all hope of a better past. She resisted. She wanted to be right more than she wanted to be free. But eventually, through daily practice, she released the resentment. She blessed her sister silently every morning. She stopped rehearsing the old story of betrayal. And here's what happened. Her sister called within 3 weeks. No explanation, just a sudden impulse to reconnect after 12 years of silence. Coincidence? No. Consciousness. When she changed the vibrational frequency she was broadcasting, the universe had no choice but to respond with a matching frequency. This is how the law works. Invisibly, precisely, without exception. You see, most people think they need to control the how. They need to figure out the path, manipulate the circumstances, force the door open. But that's working against the law, not with it. Your job is not to orchestrate. Your job is to embody. You embody the consciousness of what you desire, and the universe orchestrates everything else. The right people appear, the opportunities align, the doors open that you didn't even know existed, because you're no longer fighting the universe, you're flowing with it. And here's something that might surprise you. Imagination is not child's play. It's not frivolous daydreaming. Imagination is the workshop of God working through you. When you imagine something clearly, when you see it with feeling and conviction, you're actually impressing that image upon the universal substance. You're giving form to the formless. I've watched people transform their entire lives by changing what they imagined. A woman once came to me drowning in debt, her business failing, her confidence shattered. She could only see more failure ahead. I asked her, "What would you see if everything were working perfectly?" At first she couldn't even picture it. The mental habit of disaster was too strong. But slowly she began to imagine. She saw herself walking into a thriving shop. She felt the satisfaction of paying her bills with ease. She pictured customers smiling, thanking her for her beautiful work. Every single day she practiced this vision, not as fantasy, as truth. Within months, everything shifted. A wholesale opportunity appeared from nowhere. A feature in a local publication brought floods of new customers. The money she needed came through unexpected channels. A tax refund she'd forgotten about, a debt repaid that she'd written off years ago. Was it coincidence? I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I believe in correspondence. As within, so without. Your imagination is your preview screen. What you consistently imagine, backed by faith, must manifest. It's law. Just as surely as planting a seed produces a plant, holding an image in consciousness produces a corresponding result in your world. But here's where most people stumble. They imagine what they want for a moment, then spend the rest of the day imagining what they fear. They picture success for 5 minutes, then disaster for 5 hours, and they wonder why nothing changes. The dominant image wins, always. So you must become vigilant. You must guard your imagination like a sacred garden. When fear tries to paint its dark pictures, you gently but firmly replace them. You don't fight the fear, you simply redirect your creative power toward what you actually want. This isn't denial. This is dominion. You see, most people are trying to kill the dragon of fear. They're battling it with willpower, with affirmation shouted through gritted teeth, with sheer exhausting force. But I'm telling you, you don't need to kill the dragon. You just stop feeding it. Fear feeds on your attention. It grows fat on your worry. The moment you withdraw your mental energy from the disaster scenario and place it firmly on the desired outcome, the fear begins to starve. This is why I say your word is your wand. Where you point your attention, your life force flows. And life force is creative power. It builds, it manifests, it brings things into form. When you're replaying the argument, imagining the rejection, rehearsing the failure, you're not just thinking negatively. You're actively creating that experience in the invisible realm, preparing it to materialize. But here's the extraordinary part. The same mechanism works for good. When you calmly, persistently hold the image of the right outcome, the reconciliation, the acceptance, the success, you're building that instead. You're not pretending. You're not lying to yourself. You're simply choosing which blueprint you're handing to the universe. Let me give you something practical. A woman once came to me absolutely convinced her business partner was going to betray her. She had evidence, little comments, suspicious behavior, a feeling in her gut, and I said, "You're building a betrayal with your mind. Stop it immediately." She protested, "But I'm just being realistic. I'm protecting myself." And I told her, "You're not protecting yourself. You're creating the very thing you fear." I instructed her to change her inner conversation entirely. Every time the fear thought arose, she was to replace it instantly with, "There is a divine solution. This partnership is guided by infinite intelligence, and only right action can manifest." Not once, not as a desperate chant, but as a calm, authoritative statement of truth. Within 2 weeks, the entire situation shifted. Her partner came to her with a proposal that solved the very issue she'd been worried about, but in a way she never could have orchestrated through manipulation or control. The solution came through the partnership, not despite it. This is what I mean by dominion. You're not controlling other people. You're controlling your own consciousness, and your consciousness is the only creative power you have. And once you control your consciousness, the external world must reorganize itself to match. I've seen this happen in the most unexpected ways. A woman came to me once, absolutely frantic about her living situation. Her landlord had given her notice. She had 30 days to find a new place. And in that city, at that time, housing was nearly impossible to come by. She was terrified. She kept saying, "There's nothing available. I've looked everywhere. I'm going to end up on the street." I stopped her right there. "You're not looking for an apartment," I told her. "You're declaring that your perfect home is already prepared for you. You're not searching, you're claiming." She looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but she was desperate enough to try it. We worked on her inner speech together. Instead of "I can't find anything," she began saying, "My perfect home is being prepared for me right now. I am divinely guided to the right place at the right time." She said it every morning. She said it every night. And most importantly, she said it every time fear tried to creep back in. Within 2 weeks, she received a phone call from a friend of a friend, someone she hadn't spoken to in years. This person was leaving the country unexpectedly and needed someone trustworthy to take over a beautiful apartment at a rent far below market rate. The woman hadn't even advertised it yet. She just thought of my client out of the blue. Now you might call that coincidence. You might say it was luck, timing, chance. But I call it law. The universe doesn't operate on randomness. It operates on consciousness. My client changed her inner conversation, and the outer world rearranged itself to reflect that new conversation. The invisible moved into the visible. This is what most people miss. They think the work is out there. They think they need to knock on more doors, make more calls, hustle harder. And yes, action has its place. But if your consciousness is drenched in fear and lack, your action will only produce more reasons to be fearful and feel lacking. You must start with consciousness. You must start with your inner speech, because that's where everything begins. And here's the part that might frustrate you. You can't fake this. You can't just repeat affirmations while secretly believing the opposite. Your subconscious knows the truth. It always knows. If you're saying I am abundant while feeling terrified about your bank account, your subconscious will side with the feeling every single time. This is why affirmations alone won't cut it. You've got to go deeper. You've got to address the feeling underneath the words. I remember a woman who came to me repeating, I am loved, I am worthy, like a broken record. But every time she said it, I could see her shoulders tense, her jaw would tighten, her eyes would dart away. The affirmation was bumping up against a belief so deep, so old, that her body recoiled from the new words like they were poison. We had to go back. We had to find where that unworthiness got planted, and once we uprooted it, once we pulled it out by its tangled roots and exposed it to the light, then the affirmation had room to breathe. Then it could take root in fertile soil. You see, your subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't debate. It simply accepts what you've shown it to be true, through repetition, through emotion, through experience. If you've spent 30 years believing you're not enough, 1 week of affirmations isn't going to override that. But 1 week of affirmations combined with healing the wound underneath, that's when miracles happen. The subconscious speaks in symbols and feelings. It doesn't understand logic the way your conscious mind does. You can't reason with it. You can't convince it with facts and figures. You have to speak its language. You have to feel your way into a new belief. This is why visualization is so powerful. When you visualize yourself living in abundance, when you feel the emotions of that reality, your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's imagined and what's real. It begins to align with that vision. It begins to create pathways toward that reality. But here's the catch. You have to believe it's possible. You have to suspend disbelief long enough to let the new reality settle into your bones. If you're visualizing wealth while simultaneously thinking, yeah, right, this will never happen, you're working against yourself. You're feeding the old program while trying to install a new one. Your work then is to become aware of these conflicting beliefs, to shine a light on them, to ask yourself, what do I really believe about money, about love, about success? And more importantly, where did those beliefs come from? Most of us inherited our beliefs about love and success from people who were struggling with them themselves. Your grandmother taught your mother that love required sacrifice. Your mother taught you. And so the pattern continues generation after generation until someone finally says, wait, does it have to be this way? Think about the first time someone told you that you had to work hard for money. That prosperity was something scarce, something you had to fight for. That person probably believed it with their whole heart, and they passed that belief to you like a family heirloom. But here's what they didn't tell you. Beliefs are not facts. They're simply thoughts we've practiced so often that they feel true. I had a client once who came to me absolutely convinced she would never find love. She was brilliant, accomplished, kind. But she carried this deep certainty that she was somehow unlovable. When we traced it back, she remembered being 7 years old, overhearing her father say to her mother, she's too much, too loud, too opinionated. Good luck to whoever ends up with her. That man probably forgot those words 5 minutes after he said them, but she built her entire love life around them. Every relationship confirmed what she already believed. Every rejection proved her father right, until we changed the belief. And suddenly the same woman, with the same personality, started attracting completely different experiences. Not because she became less of herself, but because she stopped unconsciously pushing love away to prove an old story true. This is how powerful your beliefs are. They're not just thoughts floating around in your head. They're instructions you're giving to the universe about what to send your way. So let me ask you again, what do you believe about love, about money, about success, about yourself, and more importantly, are those beliefs serving you? Because if they are not, we can change them. Right now, today, in this very moment. Because the universe doesn't work on layaway plans. It doesn't hold your good in storage until you've suffered enough to deserve it. It doesn't say, well, she's been pretty miserable for 3 years now. I suppose we can release her blessing. No, the kingdom is already prepared. The table is already set. The inheritance is already yours. The only thing standing between you and your demonstration is the belief that something needs to happen first, that you need to become someone different, that you need to wait for the right time, the right circumstances, the right alignment of stars. But what if the right time is simply the moment you stop arguing for your limitations? I've watched people transform their entire lives in an instant, not because their circumstances changed, but because their consciousness changed. They stopped rehearsing the old story. They stopped explaining why they couldn't. They stopped waiting for permission from a world that was never going to give it. They simply took their words seriously. And when you take your words seriously, the universe has no choice but to take it seriously too. This is what it means to believe you have received. Not someday, not when you see the evidence. Now. You speak to your affairs as if they were already accomplished. You thank the universe before the manifestation appears. You move through your day as the person who already has what you're calling forth. Not from a place of pretending, not from a place of denial, but from a deep, unshakable knowing that in the spiritual realm, the real realm, it's already done. I remember a student who came to me desperate for work. She'd been unemployed for months, and every door seemed to slam in her face. She was spiraling into panic, rehearsing her lack with everyone who would listen. I gave her one instruction. For the next 7 days, speak only words of having, not wanting. Thank God for your perfect work. Act as if the position is already yours. She looked at me like I'd suggested she sprout wings and fly. But she did it, and within those 7 days, she received 3 job offers, one of which was beyond anything she'd even thought to ask for. Magic? No. Law? The law of assumption, the law of consciousness, the law that states, as within, so without. Your outer world is nothing more than a reflection of your inner convictions. Change the inner, and the outer must follow. It has no other choice. So I ask you, what would you speak if you truly believed your word had power? Because here's what I've learned. The universe doesn't respond to your desperation. It responds to your declaration. When you beg, when you plead, when you say, please, please, I hope this works. You're speaking from lack, and lack creates more lack. It's the law. But when you declare, when you say, it is done, when you speak as though the thing is already accomplished, you align yourself with the creative force that shapes worlds. I knew a woman once who wanted to sell her house. Months went by. Nothing. The market was slow, she told herself. Wrong location, wrong time. Every day she worried. Every day she looked at that house and saw a burden, a problem she couldn't solve. Then one day, after we'd talked, she changed her approach entirely. She stopped seeing the house as unsold. She began to say, my house is sold to the right person for the right price. She said it in the morning. She said it at night. When doubt crept in, and it did, she simply repeated it again, not as a wish, as a fact. 3 days later, a buyer appeared. Out of nowhere, someone who loved everything about the property. The sale went through without a hitch. Was it coincidence? No, it was alignment. She stopped arguing with the law and started cooperating with it. You see, most people treat their words like they're meaningless. They say one thing and believe another. They affirm abundance in the morning and complain about bills by noon. They declare health while dwelling on every ache, and then they wonder why nothing changes. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's real and what you consistently tell it is real. It only knows what you repeat. It only knows what you feel. So when you declare something with conviction, with feeling, with the assumption that it's already true. Your subconscious gets to work. It rearranges circumstances. It opens doors. It pulls strings you didn't even know existed. This isn't magic. It's mechanics. It's how you were designed to operate. But, and listen carefully, you cannot do this halfway. You cannot declare prosperity on Sunday and poverty on Monday. You cannot affirm love while harboring resentment. You cannot speak faith while feeding fear. The law is impersonal, but it is exact. It gives back to you the sum total of your inner conversation. So what are you saying when no one's listening? What are you whispering to yourself in the quiet moments? Because that is the script your life is following. Because here's what most people don't realize. You're not just thinking thoughts, you're rehearsing reality. Every time you replay that conversation where you should have said something different, every time you imagine the worst-case scenario, every time you tell yourself, I always mess this up, you're doing a dress rehearsal for your life. And the universe? It doesn't know the difference between rehearsal and opening night. It just gives you what you've been practicing. I learned this the hard way. There was a period in my life where I desperately wanted to move. Needed to move, really. The apartment I was in felt suffocating, but every time someone asked me about it, I'd say, "Oh, I'm looking, but you know how impossible the market is. Nothing ever works out for me with housing." And guess what? Nothing worked out. Not because the market was impossible, but because I'd made "nothing works out" my personal tagline. Then one day, a friend stopped me mid-complaint. She said, "Do you realize you tell that same story every single time? You've got it memorized like a script." And she was right. I could have performed that monologue on Broadway. One-woman show, woman who can't find an apartment, running indefinitely in my mind. So I changed the script. Not the circumstances, the script. I started saying, I'm looking forward to finding the perfect place. Things always work out for me in surprising ways. It felt ridiculous at first, like I was lying, but I kept saying it. Within 2 weeks, I found a place I loved. Was it magic? No. It was because I'd stopped casting myself in the role of the perpetual victim and started showing up as someone things work out for. Different energy, different results. This is what I mean by the script you're speaking when no one's listening. You think it's private, but it's the loudest thing about you. It's broadcasting on every frequency. Your inner dialogue isn't just commentary, it's creation. Every I can't, every I'm not, every it never. Those aren't observations, they're orders, instructions to the universe about what to deliver. And the universe is a very literal listener. It doesn't argue, it doesn't judge. It just says, "Oh, you want more evidence that nothing works out? Coming right up." That's why shifting your inner conversation is so urgent, because every day you wait, every day you postpone this work, you're not just staying neutral. You're actively building evidence for the old story. You're commissioning more scenes for a movie you don't even want to watch. I've seen people spend years, decades even, wondering why their circumstances never change, all while narrating the same tired script in their minds. I never have enough. People always let me down. Good things happen to other people, not me. And life, faithful servant that it is, keeps delivering more reasons to believe it. But here's the beautiful part. The moment you change the inner word, the outer world has no choice but to follow. It's law. Not because you're special, not because you finally earned it, but because that's how creation works. The outer is always a reflection of the inner. Always. So what does it mean to change the inner word? It means you stop rehashing yesterday's disappointments and start declaring today's intentions. It means when your mind wants to spiral into fear, you gently but firmly redirect it toward faith. Not someday faith. Not I'll believe it when I see it. Faith. But now faith. Present tense, audacious, unreasonable faith. You begin to speak to yourself the way you'd speak to someone you deeply love and believe in. You wouldn't tell your best friend. You're probably going to fail. Nothing ever works out for you. So why do you say it to yourself? Why do you tolerate that voice as if it's telling the truth. The truth is what you decide it is, not what happened yesterday, not what the bank account says, not what your mother-in-law thinks. The truth is the word you speak into the invisible, and then wait, with calm expectation, for it to take form. I knew a man once who'd been out of work for months. Every morning, same story. There are no jobs. The economy is terrible. No one's hiring someone my age. His wife would try to encourage him, but he'd bat away her words like flies. He was committed to his narrative of lack. Then one day, something shifted. Maybe he got tired of his own voice. He started saying, simple as anything, "My right work is finding me now." That's it. No drama, no desperate pleading, just a quiet, firm declaration. Within 2 weeks, an opportunity appeared through the most unexpected channel. Someone he'd met years ago at a barbecue reached out. Coincidence? No. Correspondence. The outer matched the inner the moment the inner changed. And what I witnessed again and again is that when people truly grasp this principle, when they stop trying to manipulate outcomes and start managing their inner state, miracles happen. I remember a woman who came to me in tears. Her daughter had married a man she disapproved of. For years she'd fought against it, criticized him, created tension in the family. She was miserable. The relationship was fractured, and she kept saying, if only she'd married someone else, if only he would change. I told her what I'm telling you. You cannot change another person, but you can change your reaction to that person. She resisted at first. But he really is difficult, she protested. Perhaps, I said, but your resistance to him is making you sick. Your judgment is poisoning your relationship with your daughter. What if you released him entirely in your mind? What if you blessed him? She looked at me as if I'd suggested she drink poison. But she was desperate enough to try. She began every day to speak words of release. I release my daughter's husband to his highest good. I see the divine in him. I bless this union. At first the words felt hollow, but she persisted. Within 3 weeks, something extraordinary happened. He called her, apologized for past tensions, invited her to dinner. She went, and for the first time, she saw him clearly. Not through the filter of her judgment, but as he actually was. A man trying his best. Flawed, yes, but sincere. Loving her daughter in his own way. Their relationship transformed, not because he changed, but because she did. The moment she changed her inner vision of him, the outer relationship rearranged itself to match. This is not psychology. This is spiritual law. You see, the universe doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your consciousness. You can affirm abundance all day long, but if underneath that affirmation is a belief in lack, lack is what you'll experience. You can say, I am healthy, while holding the image of disease, and disease will persist. The work is always internal, always. And here's what makes this challenging. You must become brutally honest with yourself. You must catch the hidden beliefs that run beneath your conscious thoughts. This is where the real spiritual work begins. Not in the meditation cushion alone, though that has its place, but in the moments when you're triggered, when someone criticizes you, when the bank account looks frightening, when your body gives you symptoms you don't want. These are your practice grounds. I've watched people do this work for years, and the ones who transform fastest are those who develop what I call belief vigilance. They become like detectives of their own consciousness. They notice the subtle contraction when they think about money. They catch the quiet resignation when they imagine their ideal relationship. They feel the tiny flinch when success seems too big, too bright, too much for someone like them. You must learn to listen to your inner dialogue as if you were eavesdropping on a stranger. What is that voice really saying? Not the polite, spiritual-sounding affirmations you paste over everything, but the real voice underneath. The one that whispers when you're alone, when you're tired, when your guard is down. I had a student once who couldn't understand why her business remained stuck despite her diligent affirmations. She said all the right words. I am prosperous. Money flows to me easily. But when we dug deeper, I asked her what she truly believed about wealthy people. And there it was, the hidden belief that had been sabotaging her all along. She believed that wealthy people were somehow morally compromised, that they'd stepped on others to get ahead, that money made people selfish and cold. Do you see the problem? Her conscious mind wanted wealth, but her subconscious mind was protecting her from becoming the very thing she secretly despised. She was caught in an impossible contradiction. No amount of surface affirmations could override that deeper conviction. Her subconscious was actually serving her, keeping her poor to keep her good, to keep her safe from moral corruption. This is the invisible prison so many people live in. They want the thing, but they've attached a belief to it that makes receiving it dangerous. Wealth means corruption. Beauty means vanity. Success means loneliness. Love means loss of freedom. Power means responsibility they are not ready for. You must find these hidden connections in yourself. You must shine light into every corner where limiting beliefs hide, dressed up as wisdom or humility or protection. Because here's what I've learned. The belief that keeps you small isn't always loud and obvious. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sounds like your mother's voice, or your teacher's warning, or the collective agreement of everyone you grew up around. It says things like, people like us don't do that, or who do you think you are, or better safe than sorry. And you know what? You've been nodding along. You've been treating these whispers like divine guidance when they're just echoes of someone else's fear. I once knew a woman who wanted to write, not as a hobby, as her life's work. She had stories inside her that needed to come out, characters that visited her in dreams, scenes that played out while she washed dishes. But every time she sat down to write, she heard her father's voice. Artists starve. Writing is for people with trust funds. So she worked in an office for 17 years, and those characters stayed trapped inside her, and she wondered why she felt so hollow. The tragedy wasn't that she chose security. The tragedy was that she never questioned whether the choice was even real. She never asked, is this true? Or is this just what one frightened man believed in 1987? Your subconscious is full of inherited beliefs that you never examined. You're living by rules you don't remember agreeing to. You're turning down opportunities because of warnings that were never meant for you. They were meant for someone else, in a different time, facing different circumstances. So let me ask you directly, what belief are you protecting? What story have you been telling yourself that keeps you exactly where you are? Because I promise you, there's one. There's always one. It might sound like wisdom. It might feel like truth. But if it's keeping you from your good, it's a lie wearing a disguise. And the most insidious part? These beliefs make you their accomplice. They convince you that you're being reasonable, practical, realistic. They make you argue for your limitations as if they're badges of honor. I'm just being honest about my situation. I'm too old to start over. I don't have the education for that. People like me don't get those kinds of breaks. Listen to yourself when you say these things. Really, listen. You're not describing reality. You're describing your habitual thought patterns. You're not being honest. You're being obedient to old programming. This is why affirmations sometimes feel like shouting into a void. You're standing in front of a mirror saying, I am wealthy, but underneath, there's this entire committee in your mind whispering, who are you kidding? Look at your bank account. Remember what happened last time you tried? Your family was never good at money. This is just foolish. And then you wonder why nothing changes. The words aren't the magic. The believing is the magic. Let me show you something that might shock you. You already have unshakable faith. You demonstrate it every single day. You have absolute unwavering faith in limitation, in difficulty, in that's just how it is. Watch how you talk about Monday mornings. Listen to your certainty about traffic. Notice your confidence that certain things never work out for you. That's not observation. That's devotion. That's religious level commitment to a belief system. You've been a faithful practitioner all along. You just didn't realize what you were practicing. So when I say you need faith, I'm not asking you to develop something new. I'm asking you to redirect something you already have in abundance. Stop having faith in obstacles. Stop being so deeply convinced of your limitations. Here's what this looks like practically. Someone offers you an opportunity. Your immediate thought is, that won't work for me because... Notice that? Because is where your faith lives. Whatever comes after because is your real religion. I can't start that business because the economy is bad. I can't find love because all the good ones are taken. I can't heal because this condition runs in my family. Those aren't facts. Those are altars you're bowing to. And the universe, being the perfect mirror it is, says, yes, of course, you're absolutely right. Let me arrange circumstances to confirm what you believe so completely. This is why I keep hammering this point about your word being law. Not because I'm being poetic or mystical, because I'm being ruthlessly practical. Your dominant conviction becomes your lived experience, always, without exception. If you walk through life convicted that things are hard, you will experience hardness. Not because life is hard, but because you're broadcasting that frequency and the universe is tuning in perfectly. This is why you see people who seem to attract tragedy after tragedy. They're not cursed, they're convinced. They've accepted a mental pattern that says, bad things always happen to me. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects that belief right back to them. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. You cannot blame the universe for giving you what you've been persistently claiming. You cannot shake your fist at the sky and cry unfair when you've been the one holding the blueprint. I've watched this play out in my own life more times than I care to admit. Before I understood these laws, I would worry myself sick over money. Every time a bill came, I would panic. How will I pay this? Where will the money come from? And you know what happened. The money became scarcer. Opportunities dried up. Doors closed. I was literally praying for provision while simultaneously declaring lack. The universe doesn't hear your prayers when your words say one thing, but your conviction says another. It responds to your dominant mental attitude, the one you carry around like an atmosphere, the one that colors every thought and word you speak. So I had to make a choice. I had to decide whether I was going to continue being a victim of my own thoughts or whether I was going to take dominion over them. And let me be clear, taking dominion doesn't mean forcing yourself to think positively while terror grips your heart. That's just painting over rust. It means actually shifting your conviction, actually choosing to see differently. I started speaking differently about money, not from desperation, but from decision. My supply is endless and immediate. I said it when I didn't believe it. I said it when my bank account laughed at me. I said it until something inside me shifted, until the words stopped feeling like a lie and started feeling like a truth I was remembering. And then, and only then, did my external circumstances begin to change. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds wonderful. But what about when I'm dealing with difficult people? What about when someone is actively working against me, blocking my path, making my life harder? Here's what I discovered that changed everything. There are no difficult people in your life. There are only difficult thoughts about people in your life. Every person who appears in your reality is a mirror. They're reflecting back to you something you believe about yourself, something you're carrying in your consciousness. The boss who doesn't appreciate you? They're showing you where you don't appreciate yourself. The friend who betrayed you? They're revealing where you've betrayed your own values, your own intuition. The family member who criticizes you constantly? They're amplifying the voice of your own inner critic. This isn't about blame. It's about power. Because if other people are the problem, you're powerless. But if other people are the mirror, you can change what they reflect by changing what you're projecting. I had a client once who was convinced her mother-in-law hated her. Every family gathering was torture. Every conversation felt like an attack. She came to me desperate, wanting to know how to change this woman. You can't change her, I said, but you can change your mind about her. She looked at me like I'd suggested she sprout wings and fly, but she was desperate enough to try. Every day, she affirmed, there is a divine relationship between my mother-in-law and me. I see the Christ in her, and she sees the Christ in me. There is only love between us. She said it didn't feel true. I told her to say it anyway. The truth isn't based on current appearances. The truth is based on divine principle. 3 weeks later, something extraordinary happened. Her mother-in-law called her, something she'd never done before, and invited her to lunch, just the two of them. At that lunch, the older woman opened up about her own insecurities, her fear of being replaced, her worry that she wasn't needed anymore. My client saw her completely differently, not as an enemy, but as a frightened human being trying her best. That conversation changed everything, not because the difficult colleague suddenly became easy, but because my client stopped feeding the situation with fear and resentment. She stopped treating it like a battle. Within a month, the tension had dissolved. The colleague became, if not a friend, then at least neutral. The drama simply evaporated. This is what I mean by changing the interior world. You don't manipulate circumstances. You don't force people to behave differently. You change your consciousness, and the outer world rearranges itself to match. Now I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but Florence, what about really terrible people? What about genuine cruelty? What about situations where someone is truly toxic? And I hear you. I'm not suggesting you stay in abusive situations. I'm not saying you should tolerate cruelty or put yourself in harm's way. What I'm saying is that even in those situations, your power lies in how you see yourself, not in trying to control the other person. Sometimes the right action is to leave. Sometimes it's to set a firm boundary. Sometimes it's to speak up. But even those actions come from a different place when they're rooted in spiritual understanding rather than fear or revenge. When you leave a situation from a place of clarity and self-respect rather than from victimhood and resentment, everything shifts. You're not running away. You're walking towards something better. And that intention makes all the difference. I once worked with a woman who needed to leave a marriage. It wasn't violent, but it was deadening. Her husband wasn't cruel, but he was indifferent. She'd spent years trying to change him, trying to make him see her, trying to get him to care. When she finally realized she couldn't change him, she felt devastated. But then something else happened. She stopped trying to change him and started asking herself what she truly wanted. Not what she wished he would give her, but what she wanted for her own life. And you know what she discovered? That for years she'd been waiting for him to apologize, waiting for him to see her clearly, waiting for him to become the person she needed him to be. Her entire emotional life had been on hold, suspended in this state of expectation that kept her perpetually disappointed. She realized she'd given him a power he never asked for, the power to determine whether she could be happy, peaceful, whole. So she took it back, not through confrontation, not through ultimatums or dramatic declarations. She took it back quietly, in the privacy of her own mind. She stopped rehearsing what she would say if he ever understood. She stopped mentally replaying their arguments, looking for the moment where everything went wrong. She started asking instead, what do I want my days to feel like? What brings me joy independent of his mood? What have I been postponing until he changes? And here's what's so beautiful. When she stopped waiting for permission to live fully, when she stopped making his approval the prerequisite for her peace, something shifted in the entire dynamic. He noticed, not because she was trying to get his attention, not because she was punishing him with withdrawal, but because authentic change has a frequency all its own. When you genuinely release someone from the prison of your expectations, they feel it. The air changes. The pressure lifts. Sometimes they step toward you differently. Sometimes they don't. But here's what matters most. You're no longer waiting to find out. You're already building something real with your own life. This is the work that nobody tells you about. Everyone wants the technique that changes the other person. Everyone wants the magic words that finally make them understand. But the real transformation happens when you stop trying to change anyone and start honoring what's true for you. You start saying no to what diminishes you. You start saying yes to what expands you. You stop explaining yourself to people who have proven they're not interested in understanding. You stop auditioning for love you already deserve. You remember that their capacity is about them, not about your worthiness. And maybe, just maybe, you start to notice the people who've been there all along. the ones who do see you, who do value you, who don't need you to dim your light to feel comfortable in your presence. Because here's what I've learned. The people who are meant for you won't make you question whether you're too much or not enough. They won't need you to translate your worth into a language they can digest. They won't make you feel like you're standing outside a window, looking in at the warmth you're not allowed to touch. The right people, they don't just tolerate your intensity. They match it. They don't shrink from your depth. They dive in. They don't ask you to make yourself smaller so they can feel bigger. They celebrate the space you take up because they're secure enough in their own. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking those people are rare. You're thinking maybe they don't exist. You're thinking maybe you're asking for too much. But what if the opposite is true? What if you've been settling for so little for so long that reciprocity feels like a fairy tale? What if you've been so conditioned to accept crumbs that a full meal looks unrealistic? The universe doesn't reward us for playing small. It doesn't applaud us for making ourselves digestible to people who have no appetite for authenticity. It responds to our energetic signature, to what we believe we deserve, to the standards we set, to the boundaries we maintain. When you stop chasing people who can't meet you where you are, you create space for people who can. When you stop dimming your light to make others comfortable, you become a beacon for those who aren't afraid of brightness. When you stop performing worthiness, you attract people who already see it. This is where the real transformation happens. Not in convincing someone to choose you, not in earning a place at a table where you have to shrink to fit, but in recognizing that you are the table. You are the standard. You are the energy that others either rise to meet or reveal. They cannot. And the ones who cannot, they're not villains in your story. They're just not your people. Their departure is not a reflection of your value. It's a redirection. It's the universe saying, not this, because I have something better aligned for you. And here's what I want you to understand deeply. Every person who walks away creates space, sacred space. Space for new connections that match who you're becoming, not who you used to be. I've watched this principle unfold countless times. A woman loses her entire social circle when she stops complaining and starts creating. At first, she feels isolated. Within months, she's surrounded by builders, dreamers, doers, people who speak her new language. The universe abhors a vacuum. When you release what doesn't serve you, life rushes in to fill that space with what does. You don't need to force this process. You don't need to slam doors or burn bridges or make dramatic declarations. You simply need to honor your own evolution and allow others to make their choice about whether they'll evolve with you. Some will, many won't. Both responses are perfect. The ones who stay and grow alongside you become your true soul family. The ones who leave make room for that family to find you. There's no losing in this equation, only reorganizing into truth. Now let's talk about the quiet ones. The people who don't dramatically exit, but slowly fade. The relationships that don't end with conflict, but with distance. These departures often hurt the most because there's no closure, no final conversation, no clear reason. You find yourself wondering, did I do something wrong? Should I reach out? Should I try harder? And here's what I want you to hear. Sometimes people fade because the season is complete. Not every relationship is meant to span your entire lifetime. Some people are in your story for a chapter, not the whole book. And that chapter can be complete even when it feels unfinished. The universe is far more intelligent than our need for neat endings. Sometimes the fade is the kindness, a gentle dissolution rather than a painful rupture. Sometimes the distance is the answer, even when we wanted a different one. Your job isn't to hold on to every person who ever mattered. Your job is to honor what was, release what's complete, and remain open to what's coming. This requires tremendous faith. Faith that you're not being abandoned. Faith that life is reorganizing itself in your favor. Faith that every ending is attached to a beginning you can't yet see. And here's what most people don't understand about faith. It's not about knowing how everything will work out. It's about trusting that it will work out. Even when every logical path seems closed, you're standing in the dark, and faith says, keep walking. You're holding pieces of a broken dream, and faith whispers something better is being built. You've lost what you thought was everything, and faith reminds you you haven't even met the version of yourself that's waiting on the other side of this. I remember speaking with a woman who lost her entire savings in a business that failed. She came to me broken, convinced she'd ruined her life. But I looked at her and said, "This isn't ruin. This is redirection." 6 months later, she started something new. Smaller, quieter, more aligned with who she actually was. Within 2 years, she'd rebuilt everything she lost and found a peace she'd never had before. She told me I had to lose everything I was forcing to find what was actually meant for me. That's what faith does. It holds you steady while life rearranges itself. But here's the part that requires courage. Faith asks you to act before you see the evidence. It asks you to behave like the person you're becoming. Before the circumstances change, it asks you to speak words of plenty when your bank account says lack. To walk with confidence when you feel afraid. To give thanks for what's coming before it arrives. This isn't denial. This is spiritual law. You're not pretending the problem doesn't exist. You're refusing to let the problem define what's possible. You're not ignoring reality. You're choosing which reality you're going to feed with your attention. Because here's the truth. Whatever you focus on expands. Whatever you speak over your life becomes your experience. Whatever you believe about yourself shapes what you allow yourself to receive. Faith is the bridge between where you are and where you're going. And you cross that bridge one step at a time, trusting that each step is creating the path beneath your feet. You know, I once knew a woman who spent years preparing for success, but never claiming it. She took courses, read books, attended every workshop she could find. She had all the knowledge, all the tools, all the qualifications. But when opportunities appeared, she'd say, "I'm not quite ready yet. Let me take one more course. Let me practice a little longer." She was waiting for permission that would never come from outside herself. Because here's what I've learned. Preparation without declaration is just sophisticated procrastination. You can study forever, but at some point, you must speak your word. You must claim your good. You must say, "I am ready now. I accept what is mine by divine right." The universe responds to declaration, not hesitation. Think about it this way. When a seed is planted in soil, it doesn't wait until conditions are perfect to germinate. It doesn't say, "Let me wait for better weather," or "maybe next season I'll be ready." The moment conditions are favorable enough, it begins to grow. It declares itself into existence. You have that same divine impulse within you, that urge to emerge, to express, to become what you're meant to be. But fear tells you to wait. Doubt tells you to gather more evidence. The ego tells you that you need external validation before you can claim your good. But I'm here to tell you that your declaration is your validation. When you speak your word with conviction, when you claim your good with faith, you activate forces that were waiting for your permission to move on your behalf. The universe has been holding your good in escrow, waiting for you to be ready to receive it. And you signal that readiness not through perfection, but through declaration. This doesn't mean being reckless or unprepared. It means trusting that you know enough right now to take the next step. It means understanding that you grow into your blessing as you claim it, not before. Say with me, "I am ready now. I claim my good. I accept the abundance that is mine by divine right. I step forward in faith, knowing that I am divinely guided, divinely protected, and divinely provided for." And as I stand in this truth, I recognize that every moment is a new beginning. Every breath I take is an opportunity to align myself with the infinite abundance of the universe. The past has no power over me unless I give it that power. The future is being shaped right now, in this very moment, by the thoughts I think and the words I speak. You see, I have learned that spiritual law is the most powerful force in existence. It supersedes all material conditions. It transcends every circumstance. When I align myself with this law, when I work in harmony with it rather than against it, miracles become my everyday experience. I remember a woman who came to me drowning in debt. She could see nothing but lack wherever she looked. Her mailbox brought only bills. Her bank account showed only shortage. But I taught her this eternal truth. What you focus upon expands. I asked her to begin each day by declaring, I give thanks for my immediate endless supply. I see abundance everywhere I look. It felt false to her at first. It seemed like denying reality. But she persisted. And as she persisted, something remarkable began to happen. The universe responded to her new vibration. Unexpected checks arrived. Old debts were forgiven. New opportunities presented themselves. Within months, she was completely free of debt and living in a state of overflow. The outer circumstances had simply rearranged themselves to match her inner conviction. This is not magic. This is law. This is the way the universe operates. Your inner world creates your outer world. Your consciousness is the garden, and your experiences are the harvest. You cannot plant seeds of fear and reap fruits of peace. You cannot plant seeds of lack and reap fruits of abundance. So I ask myself daily, what am I planting? What seeds am I sowing with my thoughts and words? Am I cultivating the garden of my consciousness with care and intention, or am I allowing weeds of doubt and fear to take root? I choose, consciously and deliberately, to plant seeds of faith, seeds of gratitude, seeds of abundance, and I water these seeds with my attention, with my declarations, with my unwavering belief in the goodness of God and the infinite supply of the universe. And now, as we draw near to the close of our time together, I want to speak to you about the eternal truth that has carried me through every storm, through every seeming impossibility, through every moment when the outer world screamed one thing and my spirit whispered another. It is this: you are never alone in your journey. The infinite intelligence that created the stars, that set the planets in their courses, that breathed life into every living thing, this same intelligence lives within you. It is not separate from you. It is not watching you from some distant throne. It is the very essence of who you are. When you speak your word, you're not speaking into an empty void, hoping some far-off deity might hear you. You're activating the divine power that already resides in your own consciousness. You're commanding the very substance of the universe to take form according to your faith. This is why I say with such certainty, what is yours cannot be kept from you. The right home, the right relationship, the right opportunity, these are already prepared for you in the invisible realm. Your work is simply to align yourself with them through faith, through gratitude, through the fearless speaking of your word. I have watched this principle work in the smallest details and the grandest demonstrations. A woman needed exactly $87. She spoke her word with precision and faith. Within days, $87 came to her through a channel she had never anticipated. Not 85, not 90, exactly 87. Why? Because in the realm of infinite supply, there is no approximation, there is perfect precision, there is exact fulfillment. Your spoken word is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. It is the tool given to you by the divine to shape your experience. Use it wisely. Use it boldly. Use it with the full authority of one who knows their divine inheritance. And remember this above all: delay is not denial. Sometimes the fulfillment of your word appears to take time. The human mind grows anxious, begins to doubt, wonders if perhaps the principle has failed this time. But I tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. The universe is always working on your behalf, arranging circumstances, preparing channels, orchestrating the perfect timing for your demonstration. What seems like waiting is actually the invisible machinery of creation moving into position. Stay faithful, stay expectant, continue to water your seeds with belief. Your harvest is assured. And remember this: the universe does not play favorites. What worked for one will work for all. The same spiritual laws that brought prosperity to kings and queens are available to you right now in this very moment. The game of life is won by those who dare to play with faith as their strategy. You might say, "But Florence, I've been waiting so long. When will my demonstration come?" And I say to you, it comes the moment you stop asking when and start knowing that it already is. Your impatience is the only delay. Time is the illusion. Your consciousness is the reality. I've watched people manifest their desires in an instant when they finally released all resistance. One woman spoke her word for the perfect home, and within hours, yes, hours, the exact property she'd visualized became available through the most unexpected channel. Another held the vision of reconciliation, and the very person they needed to hear from called that same evening after years of silence. These aren't miracles. These are spiritual laws in action. Your part is simply to maintain your vibration of faith. Don't wobble. Don't second guess. Don't let the opinions of others shake your knowing. The world will tell you to be realistic, but I'm telling you to be faithful. Faith is the highest realism because it aligns with divine truth. As we close this journey together, I want you to feel the power that lives within you. You are not small. You are not powerless. You are not at the mercy of circumstances. You are a divine being, created in the image and likeness of infinite abundance, perfect health, and unconditional love. The game of life has been rigged in your favor from the beginning. Every spiritual law supports your success. Every invisible force is conspiring for your good. There is no opponent except your own doubt, and even that dissolves in the light of your faith. So speak your word with authority. Walk forward with confidence. Expect your miracles as naturally as you expect the sun to rise. Your good is established. Your victory is certain. The game is yours to win, beloved, and you've already won it. Thank you for allowing me to share these eternal truths with you. May they transform your life as they have transformed countless others. Remember, you are blessed, you are guided, and you are deeply loved. Now go forth and claim your magnificent inheritance. The universe is waiting to say yes.